As more people choose transportation without cars, there's a need to think differently about streets and sidewalks. But a group of transportation advocates also wants to see more access to pathways through green space. And their idea is to have an emerald network through the Boston area. With us as our guest is one of the advocates, the project manager for the Livable Streets Alliance, Amber Christoffersen. Thank you very much for being with us, Amber.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Some of these pathways have been around for a while, but talk about these missing pieces connecting these places where people like to walk and ride bikes.
Yep. So this this Emerald Network effort, which we're launching now, is built on over 100 years of this work. You know, Boston was really founded on a history of greenways and linear parks by Elliott and Olmsted, two of our famous landscape architects and planners that we all know and love. And we intentionally chose the name Emerald Network to build on the Emerald Necklace. You know, our city's been expanding. When you take a look at our inventory of 100 miles of greenways, some of them are so close to connecting, but they're not quite there, and that's really the barrier to a lot of people using them and getting out to parks and connecting between neighborhoods. So the idea is the T is thought of as a system and a network. Why can't our greenway paths be thought of that as the same way rather than just a segment that's sort of standalone?
I remember discovering one of these when I was a teenager, and I went to unexpected lengths on my bike. So what is the idea here? Is this about just encouraging people to use these other kinds of transportation, or is it about safety?
It's a little bit about both, and it's, you know, there isn't one size fits all. It's not that every person's going to use every greenway to commute, and they're not going to use it just to go to parks, but it's, people have different needs. They're either getting to work, sometimes they're just getting to someone's house at night, they're going to the grocery store, and we see this network as completing some of those links between transit and cars and walking and biking. No one just uses one mode, and we think that this network will really build that in-between piece to connect people better and encourage more people to walk and bike. Active transportation is really a huge issue right now, given the health crisis, the public health crisis, given lifestyle diseases that are out there, such as obesity and respiratory issues. And you know, we think that that can hit it. It's certainly not the solution to all of our transportation issues, but it's one solution that is environmentally friendly and healthy, and we think fun, and a way to really experience the history of our landscape in Boston.
Because the other thing here is about how these particular routes work, and take something like the Southwest Corridor Park, because that really has heavy traffic on it.
Yeah, and that's a real commuter thoroughfare.
Why do so many people use that? That makes it work that way?
It's really, I think it's safe and it's enjoyable. You don't have to deal with cars honking at you. I mean, you have a couple crosswalks to get through, and we're working to improve some of those as well, because you can't ignore the greenways that already exist. We're looking at how to keep improving those and building new connections. But you know, it also was built at the same time as the Orange Line, which was a main transit corridor. So the idea is having both of those options together is, I think, what makes it really successful in knitting together the neighborhoods there. But, you know, you get dropped off at Mass Ave, and then if you're going further into city, you have to navigate tons of roads, and it's not a pleasant situation. So,
well, let's talk about something that doesn't exist yet, but which is going to be probably a heavily used area. This is around the Alston interchange, where they're redesigning the Mass Pike. So, and there could be some new access to parkland there. Explain why that's so important for transportation.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's a huge project that involves all the facets of urban planning, housing, economic development, transportation, and we really see the greenways as being the connector between those components. As we were just talking about earlier, that section of the Paul Dudley White Path is very narrow there, completely disconnected from any kind of activity. You're just kind of wedged between the river and the road. So this project has a chance to really reimagine that corridor, really fitting in with the neighborhood. And it's interesting, it's bringing together folks like the Charles River Watershed Association that's interested in improving the quality of the Charles River, and a greenway that really has good stormwater native plantings can contribute towards that environmental health, as well as moving people through that corridor and connecting them to the neighborhood.
Well, coming back to the Emerald Necklace in Boston, near Route 9, near Brookline Village, there is that gap, and this is a big corridor for going along with medical area. How do you bridge a gap? I mean, there's a lot of traffic on Route 9, so what do you do about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it just goes to show that the scales that we're dealing with of connectivity are very small. Just crossing 4 lanes of traffic it could be difficult, but it's a pretty relatively small segment to actually building out like a mile-long new greenway, and we're operating between those lengths. And so in that case, it's going to be somewhat incremental. Right now, DCR in the city of Brookline is going to put in some signalized crossing there, which is a great first step. So people can actually, push the button and say, I want to cross now, and there'll be lights and a crosswalk, and that's a good first step. There might be a longer solution that involves, potentially a bridge or whatever. These are like more
what about the
resource-intensive
financing of these improvements? As you mentioned, some of them are not going to break the bank necessarily, but you got to get money from somewhere. This is not an easy time to get more money. So what do you think?
Yep, it's definitely difficult. And the way that I think this initiative will be most successful is looking at projects that are already on the pipeline. For example, the I-90 interchange, and really advocating for the greenway that is going to be a part of that project, and saying, hey, there's some small tweaks that you can make to make this really successful, and it's something that's already part of this mega project and a fairly small really price in the end. Similar with the Green Line extension. The community path serves both exit and the emergency exits, as well as moving people through the city. So it kind of does a double duty of meeting the needs of that project, as well as serving the people that live there and want to commute or run or bike or walk or however they want to.
What about employers chipping in some way? Do you see that as a possibility?
That's a great question. That's what we're really seeking to do, is broaden our audiences. And so, not bringing in the usual suspects. We're going to partner very closely with municipalities and agencies, but part of what we're doing too is building that broader support, whether it's ground up community support of folks in the neighborhood saying we want this here, or also new economy employers that are trying to attract the top talent in Boston. And people want options to get around the city. They want beautiful parks. They want all these things that make a city a vibrant and wonderful place to live. So that's where we're looking at.
Of course, talking about how these things are all interconnected here, this isn't just strictly transportation either, because the more you facilitate bike use, maybe the more density in housing you can provide in certain areas too.
Exactly, and housing and transportation are so intertwined. I actually have a background in affordable housing, and you can if the housing's not located to jobs and commercial opportunities and healthcare, the whole piece doesn't work. And again, this is not the solution to any of our mobility problems, but it's one of the solutions. And just personally speaking, I'm a relatively new city biker, and I started biking on greenways because that's where I felt safe. That's where it was fun to be. That's where I would bring my friends. I didn't want to bring them on the roads. So I think it's a great way to get people out and start experiencing the city in a different way. And if they're not going to be left off high and dry at the end of the line, then more likely to ride.
So much the better. You mentioned people want to find out more about what's going on at Livable Streets. You've got a place they can check out?
Yep. It's livablestreets.info/Emerald Network. And we're working with many partners and players, including Massachusetts, the MAPC group, as well as Boston Green Links, which is a program of the city of Boston.
Thank you both very much for being with us. Amber Christoffersen from the Livable Streets Alliance.
Thanks.
Up ahead, the report from Jamaica Plain with Christina Rugnetta.